Thumbs up. All right. I'd like to call the East Amwell Township Planning Board meeting to order for August 21st, 2023. Let's all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The invisible part
Different one.
Go ahead, you're up.
Oh, is that
Kristen?
was added?
In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, this is a regularly scheduled meeting pursuant to the resolution adopted on January 11th, 2023, with a meeting notice sent to the Hunterdon County Democrat on January 18th, 2023. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was posted to the township website on August 17th, 2023, posted to the bulletin board, and filed in the clerk's office on August 17th, 2023. Mr. Richard Catenacci,
Here.
Miss Marnie Stetson,
Here.
Miss Jenna Casper Bloom is excused, Mr. Jamal Kadri is excused, Mr. Dante DePiero,
Here.
Miss Natalie Nelson, here, Miss Emily Deadweiler,
Here.
Mr. Al Nardi,
Here.
Mr. Mike Mills is excused, Miss Brianna Perone is excused, Kristen Panos, I am here, and also excused includes Alexis Smith, Paul Ferrero, and Megan Stanley.
Okay. All right. Review of the agenda. Any changes from anybody on the board? Okay.
No.
Before we open up to the public, I just want everybody to know that all of our professionals are out due to scheduling conflicts. It's the month of August, so they will be here in September. With that being said, can I get a motion to open to the public for items not on the agenda? Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, it's open to the public. Anyone? Come on down.
Linda Raft, East Amwell residents. First of all, I want to say great on the sound. Kristen, I heard you perfectly. It was so wonderful. I want to say thank you to everybody. I've got a question that I normally would not bring up, but we have very few people here. So I just, I felt that I wasn't going to be taking a whole bunch of people's times. I just want to confirm that what I'm thinking about the planning board and the land use management document is correct. I was thinking that the land use document was giving us a plan for where we would go in the future, sort of like a roadmap, things that we could refer to, that this is what we as East Amwell wanted. If we felt that it was important enough to make it into a law, an ordinance would be drafted, which would then go to the township committee, and they would vote yay or nay on it. So what we've got in the plan is really not a law, it's a recommendation where we see things are going.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, bye-bye.
We're open to the public. Any of you ladies that just walked in want to come up and speak?
Yeah, boy. It's a long day.
We've got perfect timing. If you want to come up and speak now, we're
Yeah.
discussing
We're late.
items that are not on the agenda.
Yeah. Francis Gavigan, you know where the hell I live.
Let the minutes reflect that.
At the minutes where double matchsticks. I went on the website, and I'm sure. I went on the website while I was going through Dr. Stuff at Penn, looking for the plan for preservation, and I couldn't find it. Blame me, I could find the agenda, but I couldn't find the plan.
For instance, the farmland preservation plan, is that what you're?
Yeah. Anyway,
Should be on there.
so I can't comment on that. It's just a case of, it's getting kind of crazy around here with the out-of-control bikers that own the road and go down the middle of it, they're gonna get killed, and then the people whose land they land on are gonna get sued. And there was, and I didn't confront her, but there was a world-class Karen on Wurtsville Road this morning. And she's lucky she doesn't get killed because she was pulling her right down the middle of the lane because I'm in nature. Crap, right on the bin there where the pipeline is, where people come up and they're racing. I think looking at some quality of life issues for the residents, you know, and I applaud you for the stuff that I can't talk about yet that's on the agenda where you're talking about warehouses and dark skies and all that really great stuff. We'll see how that comes out. But, you know, there's just what do we do and how do we get help to when the winds come through and the trees come down and the people on the mountain expect the township to pick it up, which they can't, but if there was a cart, I got a truck, I can pull it, I can't load it, and people could put their stuff in it, and then we could take it up to that county instead of jamming up the grit yard. You know, those dump trailers like they used over there on Melisowitz? You know, if somebody with deep pockets and a deep, kind heart wants to find one and donate it to the township, then that not only would help residents and seniors, but could also be very useful for township employees, because I've seen them out there cutting down trees and having to go back because people weren't happy that they didn't cut enough of the tree. But I do applaud you on what you're going to talk about tonight, and you know, I'm very supportive of at least the concepts, and we'll see what happens. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else from the public? No? No? Okay. All right, well, seeing no one else from the public, can I get a motion to close to the public?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're closed to the public on things that are not on the agenda. Presentation of the minutes. Has anybody reviewed all the minutes that Kristen drafted? And if so, any revisions before I make a motion?
I read them, no changes.
No changes? No changes? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of July 17th, 2023?
Motion.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, minutes for July 17th, 2023 are now approved. We have nothing for resolutions for approval. We have nothing for new business. On to item number 9, unfinished business, the subcommittee reports. We talked about this in the last meeting with the warehouse, dark skies, farmland preservation, and historic preservation. So let's start kicking around the warehouses. Emily, I spoke to her today. She came up with something fabulous, and I think run with it.
Oh, okay. So basically started with the premise that we've heard that, you know, there's concern that warehouses could make their way into East Amwell. My understanding going into this is warehouses were not permitted. Going through what I started with whether the ordinance, you know, what do our current laws say? What are the issues around it? So, correct, there's no place where warehouses are permitted within the township. However, I come to the conclusion that there are 2 or 3 things that we can do to sort of strengthen. The first one is really easy, quote unquote, and that is there are 2 places where there's they define the minimum off-street parking and minimum off-street loading bays or slots required, and warehousing is listed there. So maybe, arguably, somebody could come in and say, well, you have it in the list. So easy one, strike it. Just get rid of it. That one I think should be not so hard to do. Then going on to land use chapter 92/, 86, prohibited uses. So there's literally an area that says prohibited uses. However, that area, that section specifically says all uses not expressly permitted in this chapter are prohibited, including, for example, junkyards and mining. In addition, without limiting the foregoing language, uses not specifically permitted under this chapter are not permitted in the Amwell Valley District. But that's the only district to what it applies. So it basically says if we didn't say you can do it, you can't do it, but that only applies in the Amwell Valley District. I'm not, perhaps I misread that, but from my lay person sitting here, it seems to me that we should just add a blanket language. All uses not expressly prohibited in this chapter are prohibited in all districts. So then you go into each district and you say what's allowed. So you have that blanket, nothing's allowed unless we say it's allowed. Having it in one and not having it in all seems to me particularly worrisome? Confusing, worrisome.
If nothing less, if nothing
Yeah,
else.
yeah. And then it also has a list of things that it says, things that are expressly not prohibited. It says if it's not allowed, if it's not listed, it's not allowed. And by the way, these are absolutely not allowed. Junkyards, furniture stripping, dry cleaning. I sort of imagine over time everyone came in and tried to do that. So you put it on the list. Then cannabis. And if we wanted, I think we could add warehouses there too. If we wanted to, belt, suspenders, and extra buttons, So that would be my other recommendation. So basically, amend that to apply to all districts and add warehouses that it's not allowed.
Does the code have a definition of warehouse?
It does not.
Oh.
You get to a very important subject. Then I have another thing that says review schedule of permitted uses in each district. And this is where I get into the warehousing. So while it's not, as you said, not allowed, warehouses have evolved. And, I think we all used to call them storage facilities. Now there's, drop shipment facilities. And now we see things like flexible use spaces and light industrial spaces, which can morph, in my opinion, or actually can. And I actually found two examples recently, townships in New Jersey. One was a developer looking for approval to construct a flex warehouse/office space building and parking lot along with associated improvements. So there you go. It's an office space that could be turned into a warehouse that could be turned into an office space. So we kind of need to think about that. And then there was another one where a 20,000 square foot, one-story multi-tenant office warehouse building. So another example. And I didn't put, there's, I think, a company, Allied Building, that actually literally is like advertising that they create these flex spaces. So figuring out, and this is where I okay, we need to kind of go through our permitted uses and see how we can tighten those up. There are, look at each place where office space is allowed, where multi-tenant buildings are allowed, where there's places where, you can put multiple types of buildings in the, sort of shopping districts. All of those, I think, need to be looked at individually at a district level. And I did not do that. So I sort of said, here are the two wholesale things. And then I think the next level of that is to look at those individual areas. And then there are a couple organizations that have sort of citizens organizations that have sprung up to sort of fight warehouses. So I thought to maybe ask them what they've seen. I actually went online looking for model ordinances about warehouses, and I found plenty from environmental groups on how to do it not badly. But I didn't see anything where if you really don't want it, here's the 10 ways not to do it. Just an anecdote I think some of us might find amusing. In Hillsborough, a developer came before them and wanted to put a warehouse. And they said, they're not allowed. So then he came back and said, I'd like it to be a light industrial building. And so now that's being considered. Meanwhile, what was introduced a couple weeks ago was a ordinance to not permit trucks on the road where he wants to put his light industrial building. Now, granted, I don't think we're there yet, but it does show the sort of extremes that people are going to. This is a township that has something like 6 or 7 pending applications. Thankfully, we're not there. But, we could look at any of the roads interiors that we might be concerned of. Obviously, we have no control over what's on Route 31. If we did, I would be very busy trying to control what's on Route 31. But we could also look at things like that. So I think that's the sort of the next level. The first two, to me, are no-brainers. Knock them out. And then look at the uses in the different zones with that in mind. And that can be a sort of a second level. So that's my report on that.
Thoughts, comments from anybody else on the board?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Richard.
First thing I did is go to
Thank you.
the Bible. There's very little on warehousing, literally 2 pages.
Yeah.
So, and the only thing that we should be very much aware of when we do this is that the law seems to indicate that you have to make a differentiation as to whether or not it is a principal or accessory use.
Yes, I've seen that in the code,
So-
yes.
So that is something you have to be very careful about. And in a lot of these places, there are factories already.
Yes.
No, I don't think we have any. I'm not aware of any place in East Amwell where there is a factory. But if there was, that would be an that would be an
But
accessory
as-
use, and probably we would have to,
So accessory storage, if my recollection is correct, there are places where accessory storage is allowed. So, I looked, and warehouses on their own, there's literally 2 references, which I mentioned.
Yes.
Then I went through primary uses, conditional uses, accessory uses, and conditional uses. And there's places in there, we may want to keep those. I think we just need to be conscious and be deliberate. One of the things that I learned, and I will not be able to cite the case, but there's New Jersey case law that basically, how you have those long preamble and you say the intention of this area is to preserve it, and things like this aren't allowed. And then there's a list of things that are permitted or not permitted. And there's actually a case where I think it was Wawa and Cherry Hill wanted to go in, and it literally said we don't want things like high volume stores. It's literally what it said. But then it wasn't expressly prohibited or something. And so they really literally said that part where you say what you want, the goals, that doesn't matter. It's actually what you literally put line by line. So I want to, with that in mind, reading that, I think it's worth going through.
I agree with you. I am totally in favor of
Yeah.
keeping standalone warehouses out of
Yeah.
East Amwell in any zone, because quite frankly it's nothing but problems.
Yeah, no, I think our biggest risk right now is somebody coming in and saying, I'm building an office space, and I can build a really big one in certain areas, and then next thing you know,
Right.
it's something we don't want it to be. So I think that's, I'll open up that can of worms. So on 1 and 2, I don't know what the next step is. Do I draft something? Okay.
Sorry, I was, like, when I'm thinking about it, if I were gonna come in,
Yeah.
I might just not call it a warehouse, or
Yes.
it might be a distribution center, and so I'm wondering, I think 1 and 2, this is beyond 1 and 2. like,
Yeah.
Not the easy one, but is there somewhere where you define what kind of space, just simply on size
Size,
wise, that so that you can't have an office space that's,
That has more than one trucking bag or
Right,
something. I'm making
right.
things up.
Because
Yeah.
I call it an office space, but then I don't have any tenants, and it's suddenly a distribution center or a
Yeah,
warehouse.
yeah. I mean, I don't have the answer to that, and I also, I found these 2 examples, but we can spend a little more time looking for the creativity that's been involved in trying to get these things through. But I don't, other than that, I don't know. I don't have a quick answer. And I Googled, like, what is the definition of a warehouse? And I found, long pieces of things on all the different types of warehouses and what they do, but nothing that seemed plain English of what you want. And truth is, we don't want a warehouse, we don't want a break bulk facility, we don't want a flexible office space that one day has who knows what's in it, you know. So I think,
where everybody, assuming I'm on the same page as you are, I'm getting people going like this around the table. Is there anyone who isn't on the same page? Is there?
I think we're all on the same page.
Okay, so we're,
It's not a big
so
pro
we
warehouse
just
crew.
gotta do as much as we can to get,
so then what do? We write a letter to the township committee, or
No,
what-
no, no.
Adopt
So,
it.
well, my suggestion, Mr. Chairman, is that what you'd want to do next is to, have Emily send her two first suggestions to the town attorney. Have them take a look at the existing ordinances, think about it in the context, and get that feedback for
Okay.
what his thoughts might be about
Okay.
how it sits, how it might apply, what options. I
Mhm.
think that
what
would-
can of worms I might be opening that I don't know
Yeah.
about. Yeah, especially that number 2. Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, I'll draft something and send it to you, Al.
Yeah, send it to me, and I also want to send it to Megan, just
Yep.
as well. I know she's on vacation,
Yep.
but when I spoke to her, I was like, I want to give her as big a heads up as possible come September meeting, so we don't have to rehash this all over again.
Yep.
Save
Yeah,
us some
and I think
time.
it's helpful. I mean, obviously we want to make sure that throughout the township, we have the kind of uses that we expect. And so I think this is a very good thing to work on that process.
Absolutely. Anybody else? All right, well, let's open it to the public to discuss this one. Can I get a motion to open to the public to discuss the warehouse?
Motion?
All right, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Francis was first, go ahead.
Okay. Gonna see him walk. Still Francis Gavigan from Worksville Road. I know that I think one of the things that would need to be added is to manage the scale and scope of warehousing. I mean, if somebody's got a garage and a shop, like, the lawnmower place over
That's an
there.
accessory use,
That's
yeah.
an accessory, but I mean, it's, used to be that there were limits in the size of an indoor arena and all these other kinds of things. To try to keep it to where you have a function that blends with the community,
Mhm.
but doesn't take it over, and also add looking at factories. Because there is stuff that gets manufactured here, but it slides under the radar. If somebody puts in a building and they want to start manufacturing parts and this, that, and the other for cars or whatever it might be, or plastics, do we have anything that protects not only the emissions that would come out of it, but also the groundwater and the environmental impact? So it's not, I would proffer that it's not whack-a-mole. Oh, factory, boom. Oh, warehouse, boom. That we need to coordinate to get what will work in our community, and also, just like you had the overlay in the master plan, identify areas where these are specifically prohibited, like the village, or the dark skies or skyline or whatever, the visibility part. Nobody minds a greenhouse, but nobody wants greenhouses lit up that are multiples of the horse farm down the road and all of that. And I think we are open to that, and they'll have probably the lawyers that Den Hollander had coming in here. And, well, their definition, what's a temporary greenhouse? So you build a structure and you have a tarp over it, then you take it down, is that temporary? Or does the superstructure count into things like that? And I applaud what you're doing, but it might be worth coordinating with your subcommittees and some members of the public who might have at least an opportunity or an idea to share that you can take under consideration. You know, because, you know, I just think of Backbrook and the people downstream and Manners Road, and we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the resident who was drowned. You know, I don't care so much about my car that got totaled, but, you know, it's, what were there, 4 or 5 people that were drowned in East Amwell?
The
I
number.
don't know. I don't know. I just don't want more of it. And the water dumped from point A to B to C that lands on the, you know, the, oh God, sorry, it's been a long, long day, about some of the preserve farms along the creeks. And you don't want to have to make everybody along Elizabeth move their house the way, you know, the big farmer did, because there's no place to move a lot of it to.
Okay.
But good job, Emily.
Mhm.
And I think there is stuff out there. If I can send it to you, and then you can.
I will reach out.
Thank you.
Linda?
Linda Raff, East Amwell citizen. Emily, I have to tell you, I was sitting in my chairs and I just wanted to jump up and down and applaud you. I thought what you gave was a fantastic, to the point of what you were working on. I'm a little bit different from Francis in that I don't try to incorporate everything. I would much rather get together, get warehouses done, get it under control, and go to the next thing. Because every time we try to put all these different things into it, it comes a year later and we still haven't got it. So what you're saying is good, but what I'm saying is I love the pinpoint. Thank you very much. I loved what you did.
I'll say thank you, and I also kind of realized when I said review all the uses and all the zones, I had this kind of like, oh boy, what a can of worms that's gonna be. I'll have to just focus on warehouse, but I'm gonna find all kinds of other things. I wanted, you know, this was very clearly out of this, you know, out of the prioritization, and that's where I focused.
Get something done, finished, put away, go to the next one. Love it.
Done and
And
dusted.
that's our mission, exactly. Anyone else from the public? Noel, come on up.
Emily, awesome. And you're so right with having to be so specific. Cause the in West Orange, there's a case that, and I did not bring my cheater glasses, so I'm sorry. But there was one word that wasn't defined, and then all hell broke loose. And it was, well, it could be interpreted like this, and then it could be also interpreted, whatever, in another direction. So that was, you're absolutely right with how you have to be so specific, because people are getting extremely crafty with what they're calling things, and that's a big concern too. And I don't know if this falls under warehouses or not. My next comment that I'm just concerned about, where things are also getting very crafty, is developers will come in and say, well, I think you need a redevelopment plan and we're gonna put a warehouse in. So that's another concern of mine as well. So it's all out of the
Sneaky, I think, is what you're
Yes,
talking
I'm
to.
trying to be politically correct,
Mhm.
not,
Avoid the weasels.
right, yes, you're right.
I think Francis makes a good point about factories, though,
Yeah, no,
In terms of-
I noted it.
because you're going to especially have a problem in terms of the Right to Farm Act and what constitutes an auxiliary use, for example, take something that we're very much aware of, the vineyards. I mean, they get special protection, and they can do things because they're considered to be farms, and the legislature has been very protective of them, and certainly that's where this auxiliary building versus something else comes into play, because, I mean, it's one thing to have a building in your vineyard where you actually are processing the grapes in terms of making the wine. It's another thing to decide you're going to have a bottling factory. And you're going to be bottling not only the grapes and the wine from your vineyard, but you know, many other vineyards. And and that is something that we need to be, I think we need to be very, very conscious of. Thank you for asking.
That's a good point.
Speaking to what you just said, you can limit it to wine or wine products along the line of what the SADC has said about vineyards, but other bottling, you don't want seltzer water or the stink of the stuff that comes from down there. So there's, you know,
I don't want a bottling plant in the valley, and nor do I think anybody else does.
But just make sure you define it.
What?
Because the bottling of your product is a necessary,
No, I understand.
That's what
There-
he's saying.
yeah.
There is the bottling of the product of your vineyard is one thing. Opening up a bottling plant and producing tens of thousands of bottles of wine from grapes that are not from East Amwell and are not from your vineyard, but is not auxiliary. It's in my opinion, and I think the courts would say it's not. That's not auxiliary. That's a primary use, and the town has the right by ordinance to regulate that.
Okay.
But
But
I
the
also agree with Francis
percentages
that
of the-
we need to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, well, we're gonna try to knock out this warehouse one in the next month or so.
Vineyard stuff, they do bring in grapes from other vineyards that are local and things like that. They're required to have a certain percentage grown on the farm, but to get wine, they've got to have more juice. And would it be if Old York and Unionville shared some of the bottling efforts? Those are things that could be within your township.
Right.
They're not gonna
Yeah,
share
and
anything.
I understand what everybody's saying, but we're gonna focus primarily on the warehouse.
They're
But
not
the next
friends.
iteration of choosing our priorities, maybe that'll be next. But I wanna knock out the warehouse one first.
No, great job.
Anyone else from the public? All right,
Somebody else here?
seeing no one else, can I get a motion to close to the public for the warehouse? Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next on the agenda is, let's review of the dark sky ordinances. So Natalie and Marnie, I think you guys are working on this one.
So, is this okay? We looked at East Amwell's dark sky ordinance, we looked at some other municipalities, their dark sky ordinances. And I think we concluded, but, you know, totally open to other opinions, that take aside for just 1 minute the idea of greenhouses, that the dark sky ordinance is actually incorporates a lot of the best practices that are suggested by the International Society of Lighting Engineers. And it was rewritten to try and make it understandable to a layperson. And when we looked at some of the other towns' ordinances, they're still sort of written in engineering speak. And it's really hard to take a look at them and have any idea what, 1,000 lumens is or whatever it is. So our sense was that our ordinance is pretty good. Now that is different from enforcement, and that's not on our plate. So we're just thinking about the ordinance and what works and what doesn't work. But there is this gap when it comes to greenhouses, or 24-hour-a-day illuminated hoop houses or whatever you want to call them. So there are a couple places that seem like it could be pretty easily remedied. Places where it talks about dawn to dusk lighting that's not allowed, and you could add greenhouses there. Although there are, there are issues for Frank. There are right to farm issues that someone has to look at. There are places where, let me just see. So it says at one point, barn lights and dusk to dawn lights are permitted only when fully shielded and properly aligned. Greenhouses could be added there. Dusk to dawn lights are prohibited for commercial, sports, and recreational facilities. Greenhouses could be added there. And then at another place, when it's talking about outdoor light fixtures that are allowed, greenhouses is in there. So we might want to take it out of there. Just some pretty easy ways to tighten up the greenhouse part of the dark sky ordinance. That's where we ended up in our research.
Marty, was that the genesis of looking at dark sky? Was the greenhouses, or were there other concerns? I don't recall.
We've heard concerns from
Yes, I remember.
residents. But I think that, but if you just read the ordinance,
It's
our
enforced.
ordinance is okay.
It's
I'm
the
not
enforcement.
sure, right, and I know, so, some of the complaints were about headlights, like, there's nothing we can do about headlights, people need headlights to drive their car.
We should take that on
But,
with all our power.
there may be also legitimate concerns that have to do more with, I think, more with enforcement than with the actual state of the ordinance.
Got it.
But I'm open to someone pointing out some violation that is happening that isn't covered by the ordinance. I didn't find it, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
Anybody on the board want to discuss this one? Dante, Natalie?
Well, so that sounds helpful, and your suggestions sound good. And I too have heard residents saying that they thought the ordinance was pretty good overall, but neighbors' lights are shining in their eyes and things like that, and so made the point about enforcement being a necessary part.
And actually, there is one thing I forgot. Apparently, since this ordinance was drafted, there's a lot more research on, hopefully I don't goof this up, long wavelength warm light versus short wavelength cold light, and that the long wavelength, I think this is right, is less interfering with wildlife. And so maybe we add something in here that when it's possible, installations should opt for long wavelength or, least disruption to wildlife kind of lighting, particularly insects, I think.
I'm sorry, I haven't looked at the ordinance, the lighting ordinance for nighttime. Does it still, at one time it required, lights to be down
Yes.
facing, does it still have that?
Yeah.
Because that's usually a good way to allow people to have ability to have their walkway lit as they come up, but have it not really go anywhere else.
Yeah, so it has things about how far it can go from the source, that it can't go over a neighbor's property line, that it has to be, downward facing, and that it has to be turned off by, I think it's
Certain
11,
time.
yeah.
So Dante, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. When coming off Route 31, there's several buildings on the right-hand side, and they have all these lights all on, and I look at them and I say, what for? Is that, my guess is that's probably permitted and it's more of a conversation, and they may be allowed, but maybe there's an awareness that, again, outside our charter necessarily, that could cover some of these issues. Because it sounds like what he's doing is completely legal, and I look at this every time and I keep thinking, oh, I should just go over there and ask him. Does he really need all those lights? Because
Well, and that's a
there's
good
no
point.
catalytic converters outside there.
Yeah, but, I mean, your point is well taken, I think, because, obviously, we don't want a police state that we spend
Exactly.
more time going around cracking down on people. So a lot of times folks might not realize maybe there's been new construction and they really weren't mindful about what some of these things that Marty's talking about in the ordinance. And so the more you can get people to understand that they can still have all their light, it faces down, it doesn't go over the property lines, it doesn't get in the neighbor's eyes, I would think most residents would find that's perfectly fine then, and they would do it.
Yeah.
And so I think your point is right.
Because for security purposes, you are, in some instances, you are able to have lights on all the time, but they still have to meet all these
Yeah,
requirements.
yeah, and I was kind of joking, like, does he really need, and I don't want to
Right.
Right.
make one person, but it's an example that's very obvious to me, like, I understand the security, we all hear about all the catalytic converters that are being stolen, and to me, that looks like something that if it were my house, I would put it on a motion sensor. Because you do need that security, but maybe you don't need it all the time. But again, it's a particular example, and I don't mean to take it there, I just trying to understand where the line is between laws and
Right.
neighbors, being good neighbors.
Perhaps we can put something on a, I don't know if the township website or somewhere, something like tutorial of best practices or new technologies to,
The welcome wagon.
Yeah, basically the welcome wagon, right? I think that might be beneficial.
Welcome wagon, here are all the rules when
Yeah,
you move
right.
here.
And by the way, here's some good plumbers.
Not so welcome wagon.
Anyone else on the board before I open it to the
You
public?
get someone who does, astronomy and shows people
Yeah.
what the stars look like,
Yeah.
and then points out how to do that. You really need to have some of these lights, not getting everyone's eyes, and if it's a positive experience, maybe.
And the research about the insects is actually terrifying. Like how
The
badly,
attractants,
how badly it's impacting their.
Well, if anybody knows a guest speaker, from a university like Princeton, maybe that would be nice to
Right.
tear something along those lines.
There used to be folks who went to Washington's Crossing State
Mhm.
Park, and they would have, someone would bring a really nice telescope and do it. I don't know what group that was, but
Yeah,
East End was a great spot because with the mountain especially, there are lots of dark areas that you
Absolutely.
don't have around us.
absolutely. Anyone else on the board? All right. Can I get a motion to open to the public about dark skies?
Second.
Second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Public? Who wants to speak? Come on down, Francis. She raised her hand first.
I just bit my elbow.
Oh, all right.
Francis Gavigan, hopefully I'm projecting enough. I think a thing that we need to consider doing, just as we've mapped various areas of the township at high risk of flooding or this, that, and the other, but an inventory of our primary view sheds. You come up 202, down 202, and you see all the way to Totten Farm. You see this first ridge that's along here, or even along our border with Raritan. There are a number of places that are incredibly beautiful.
Mhm.
I'm fortunate enough to be across the street from a preserved farm, and I have panoramic dark skies, but I also have lights on my house because Bambi keeps eating my crops, and the only reason I got zucchini and some other things are because of fences and other things. One thing you'll want to avoid, or to specifically say, we're not talking about those little solar lights that you go to Home Depot and you get, and you put on your walkway or whatever, because there are a lot of people who have landscaped and decorated their houses, and it's lovely. But it's also not coming off the property or, something projecting in your place. But I would think our view sheds are an important area to protect, Manners Road and things like that. And if you go back 32 years or more, I don't know if you ever saw the master's thesis that Alona English did on preservation on East Amwell.
I did
And
see
it
that.
talks about the mountain, but then the ridges, when you go up Manners Road and you're surfing up the highway. Those kinds of things are, to be protected or at least minimized. In the construction codes, if you're going to have buildings and you're going to have lights, just as you require barrier arbor vitae for a solar array, scale, once you get to it, factory or greenhouse or something, that is in a view shed area, that it could be required or highly recommended. And it, you know, it never does any harm to plant another plant. And they grow up and they shield.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Linda?
Linda Raft, East Amwell resident. I have to tell you, this is one that didn't grab me. I'm sorry. I think part of it is because I live on a 15-acre farm and it's pretty dark out there. I mean, when I walk out, I don't see anything. We do have lights that when we were shipping our horses out and everything at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning, I wanted big, bright lights. I had horses I had to load onto a trailer and everything. I'm sure I probably broke some law at that point in time, but it was for a purpose. I had to get my horses on and, you know, get out safely. Our next door neighbors, I think they have lights on a little bit more than they're supposed to. They also have the chickens and the lambs and the, you know, that you have lights on a lot of times to keep the foxes away and all the other animals. Does it bother me? Not a bit. It's on a farm. It's right over there. It's not the same thing to me as
Scale.
Pardon?
It's scale.
Yes.
You need to manage the scale.
You know, it's like there's a whole different thing between a road that's had, sorry to say this, but newcomers, you know, coming in from cities and they expect to have bright lights and everything. They want to have these city, and you know, for people who are putting them on for a purpose. So I'm just saying that even though I think I like what you did, I love what you people are doing, but at the same time, this didn't grab me like Emily did. Sorry.
Thanks.
Gee, thanks.
Nothing personal.
Right, right. Anyone else?
I thought we did this good.
Can you come up so we can hear you? You're,
And don't give us grades, okay?
right.
Oh, fabulous.
Awesome.
Just a quick recommendation. I didn't even know there was a lighting ordinance until like 6 months ago. I was like, oh my God. I had no idea. Not that I have all these lights all over the place, but I just had no idea. I never even knew there was one. And then now, this will make you laugh. My concern is, because I live on a dark street and my long driveway and me coming home from work and hitting the snow in my driveway. So now I want to put up some
You do
extra
drive with
lights.
headlights, don't you?
Right, right.
You
No,
use
we're
headlights when you
regulating
drive in
those.
the
I know,
I was
but
teasing.
you know,
Sometimes the county
You know.
allows the exuberance.
it's, so
Put reflectors on your driveway.
how am I gonna do
Alright.
it? What a
This
joke.
way you won't,
Yeah.
they won't light up unless your headlights
Mhm.
hit it.
So hopefully you laugh about this. Okay, yeah, I hit snowbanks every now and then.
That was practical.
But
solution.
so what? Cause I think what everybody is saying is maybe just you know, more of a First, let's let people know, because I had no idea there was a lighting ordinance, and then like they had brought up about, you know, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning and needing light.
I think,
Yeah.
can I just,
I don't-
can
Yeah,
I
would
say
you
one
explain
thing?
the difference? Because I
Yeah,
think that
so,
would be helpful.
so,
Yeah,
so-
it's not that you live in the dark, so yeah.
right, so the reason it's called dark sky, it's because it's trying to preserve your ability to see this, you know, the sky way up in the air, not to keep you from having lights on your property. Like, if you look at the ordinance, it's all about keeping the light in your space so that it doesn't impact the sky above. So it's, I think anything that you're imagining is not going to be in violation of it. Like, if you have a spotlight that's shining onto your neighbor's property, then that
yeah.
is going to be in violation of the
And
ordinance.
your neighbor will let you know.
Right.
Right, yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to send out anyone
But it
at 3 in
doesn't
the
mean
morning.
like midnight town. Like, it's not dark everywhere all the time.
All right, I got science fiction.
I don't want you to crash into snowbanks.
Yeah.
So, I was pissed off, but it was funny after.
Okay. And anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, could I get a motion to close to the public on the dark skies?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next on the subcommittee task list is
Farm and preservation?
Farm and Preservation, and we don't have anybody here to discuss it unless somebody else is aware of it, but Jamal's out, Mike's out. Okay, we'll just skip that one for this month, and we'll hit it in September. Historic Preservation.
Yeah, I'm happy to report that while I didn't have much success in getting anything out of the Historic Preservation Committee of East Amwell, there is a wealth of information available from the county. And I spoke with John Allen, who of course is always the most gracious and helpful person that can deal with in this township, and he took the time to go to and cull from the county those areas that were specific to East Amwell. So I now have a 38-page, I believe, report from John Allen that lists all of the historical properties, the barns. It's
fantastic.
It's a wealth of information, and I have to give total credit to John Allen, because I called him up and I said, help me. And he helped me. I mean, they have everything from bridges, they have barns, and of course all the historic homesteads and information about them, who's the first settlers. It's just, it would take thousands and thousands of hours, and we have it now.
Perfect.
The next part of it is, of course, is prioritizing, and there John was, again, very, very helpful. He said to me, quote unquote, Richie, don't get in that political thicket. He said, what I think we can do is we can put together some criteria, like that should be used in evaluating something. He said, everybody thinks that their house is the one that the township should put a lot of money into, and he said, and you're never going to get a political agreement on some of these things because, and I said, the last thing in the world I want this to do is to be a political issue or political thicket, and I will not get, thank you for the advice. So I intend to put together a very short report for our committee that basically says, we've got the research and again, the short report will say what I think are some of the criteria that we should agree upon as being, for example, was the building always part of East Amwell? Because some of these buildings were not, and that might. How old is the building is obviously very, very important, but what's its present condition? I mean, is a lot of people think renovation is restoration, and a lot of the buildings that have been quote unquote renovated have not been restored. I mean, they've ripped everything out, but the facade. I don't think we're interested in, Sturbridge Village kind of things I don't think we're interested in spending millions of dollars for facades of buildings. But on the other hand, we may feel that there are certain houses that are truly, truly historic. Some of them have been already, people have taken an interest in them, have spent, millions of dollars, and they're preserved. Some people have taken the buildings and, gutted them and said that, this is preservation. obviously that's not preservation. So we'll put together some criteria that can at least help us in evaluating, and then from there, the question is, is money. And again, I think that John Allen is very helpful. There is sometimes state money or county money that can go, and if it's something that we're interested in, and again, this is well beyond our pay grade. This has to be, this is township committee business in terms of money or tax subsidies or whatever, however they're going to deal with that. But I just, as I said, I was hopeful that I was not going to take gazillions of hours in order to even to find it, and it didn't. It was a piece of cake, and I want to express my personal thanks, and I think, quite frankly, that the board and the township committee should. John Allen is a prince. there is no, and he knows it all. A number of years ago, he did, in gratitude for opening my home to the tour for the East Amwell Historic Society. He did something on my home, which is in here, but again, he did the whole thing for me, and it would cost probably thousands of dollars to have that done, and it was he walked in. It was a gift. He said, "Thank you for opening your home and for helping us with the East Amwell Historical Society and donating your money and your furniture and things."
Great.
And so that's a nice. It's a nice story about people in East Amwell.
Well, Rich, I'm glad you met with John and collected this, because I know when you first started investigating, you said township didn't seem to have any records about historic structures. So this is really helpful.
And Francis has been on. Nothing. There are bits and pieces of things supposedly that go back, but nobody could put their finger on them.
Krista, it was all turned over, and then God knows where, when Barbara moved away, she took all of her stuff that she had worked on, and she gave it to Krista, and no one knows where it went. Did it go straight into the round file or other things? It's back there somewhere, or it's gone. There are individuals like John.
No, yeah,
or
we'll discuss
Yeah.
in a second. I just want to keep it on the board. But what would be great is, with your permission,
Yeah.
maybe you can email it to myself and Kristen, and we can put it on
I
one of the
can-
Google Drives
Yeah,
for the
I-
township to
I
keep.
can give you. I can't.
Versus
My
the hard
husband-
copy.
My husband,
Yes,
when he gets
exactly.
back, we're selling one of our places at the shore. When he gets back from that, my husband can send you the link. So she won't have to.
Scan it.
And anybody who
perfect,
wants.
perfect.
Anyone certainly on the planning board, quite frankly, it's a public document.
Well, and my point was, one, it's important institutionally to have it and to keep it, and so I think,
Right, sure.
putting it on the website is good for that. But
Sure.
what it does secondarily is, it's also an asset, right? People can get more interested in the history. If we
It's a
see
wonderful asset. No?
structures that are, falling apart, which often happens with historic structures, and there's not attention, neighbors or whoever might become interested and keep it from being lost. So I think it's a good.
So I actually have a question about this. You alluded to, restoration and lack of money for restoration. Is not part of this looking and saying, are these special houses, though we may not want to restore them, we may not have the funds to restore them, we also don't want them taken down or without somebody at least paying attention. And I recall specifically the Purple House, right? It was planned to be demolished. think John Saramba brought it up, and it was, you know, now it's going to be, the facade will remain, I don't know what will happen inside, I highly doubt it's gonna be restored
There was
to
a
your
reason,
point.
but there
But-
was a reason for that.
So I guess my question is part of the charter or the goal here is, okay, now we have an inventory. There might be a 1% chance that we can pick a house and we can find some money to restore. But are we also, is there some protection, not by law, but at least by awareness that we want to look at some of these structures for? For example, there was someone here who was talking about one of the Sears Roebuck houses that's, it was a former catalog. I got to think that there might be somebody that's really interested in that. For some reason, you know, maybe
Yeah,
Sears,
maybe.
well, no, Sears is out of business.
And again, it's.
So I guess my question is, what's the
we're-
goal?
We're talking about a lot
Step
of these
one.
houses that from 1650 and
Yep.
17, you know, my house, you know, in terms of parts of my house date back to 1714.
Yep.
It's long before Sears Roebuck.
No, I take your point, but there's
But
different
it-
values for different people and.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and that's where we get into the political thing, and that's where John is very helpful. He says, I mean, it's really pretty simple. How is this house an important part of the history of East Amwell?
Okay.
I mean, no, can anyone doubt that the Landis house is important? No. And can anyone doubt that Dr. What's-His-Face, I'm happy to see your moment, Dr. Lowerson? I mean, yeah, I mean, some of the, you know, the East Amwell Boys School dates to 1806, but that's kind of, that's an older, you know, and that's of course, the Harvest Moon. But I think that that awareness is clearly something to do. And the other thing, quite frankly, is I suspect that savvy people will go to the you know, the people on that can make to the mayor and the deputy mayor and say, you know, what do you think this? I'm interested in buying this piece of property and doing this with it, and get a quick, like, don't waste your time.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm gonna reveal my ignorance. Let's say, I'm just using the Harvest Moon as an example. They decide they're gonna sell that building. Someone wants to buy it. Is there anything to keep them from doing something that completely loses them?
That's what I was getting
Yeah, that's
at,
what I-
like,
No.
you made it, you asked the question much more clearly and succinctly than.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of the rest of the analysis,
There is
right?
the historic
The
register.
first is
This is
identify.
step one.
Yeah.
Right, this is
Okay.
step one, and then after that, all these things, and that's what I was mentioning, so the structures aren't lost, and precisely goes to, you know, someone buys it as a tear down, right?
Right.
Or they don't pay the maintenance, and so it's just lost, and so it can't be used anymore, so I think that's what follows on. And I think
Okay.
this is
So
a
first
great
we have to
start.
know, then we figure out
Right.
what
Yeah.
we're gonna do.
Yeah.
about it.
Because we didn't
Money
even
be
know
made
this.
for that.
Yeah, because
We didn't even know
yeah,
this.
when he started out, we could find no list that
Right.
said, and we know we've got historically valued property,
Yep.
so this is a great
So-
first step.
No,
It's a
as a matter of
huge
fact,
first step.
the master plan, quote unquote, said, you know, we haven't been able to locate anything that's been done, you know, in East Amwell archives, for lack of a better term. And Francis has said, you know, there are things that were done, but people seem to think that even though they were working on a township committee, that their work was their own. And so when I leave, I take my work.
Yeah, well, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah. And
No, 'cause it's
As
on
long
our
as I'm,
website.
as long as I'm the chair.
Right.
Yeah, we'll keep that on a Google Drive somewhere. Anybody else before I move this to open to the public? Okay, well, motion to open to the public on the historical preservation.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Francis?
Now you can talk.
Extravagant,
Yeah, now you can.
whatever.
Got our four
Um,
folks.
The oldest house in Hunterdon County, the Prowl House was demolished because of the way we preserved the old Cavalier Farm, because of the way the SADC rules are written, that you can only have 2 residences unless one is farm workers. And I went down and tried to convince the SADC to make an exception, because the people fixed up one house that they lived in, and then Mrs. wanted her McMansion, ugly as sin, but that meant that the oldest house in the county was destroyed and nobody knew about it until it was over with. I'd say there's more of a root cause question to look at. Historic preservation. Are we going to have a commission or a committee? Do we have a demolition ordinance? Do we have things that if you're going to demolish or significantly renovate, to get your building permits, you have to check the inventory. It has to go before whatever committee you or commission you end up with, and then you can try to encourage or maybe require certain standards and build it in. But the first chicken or egg is a commission that has some authority to impose or to review, and a commission that it just sort of changes from year to year, and it's usually whoever's the chair and leads it, and it goes on to whatever, and different people over the 27 years I've been around, and including that, there are people that hoard, and they turn in their stuff, and God knows where it went, but I'm one, John Allen's another, that we've kept stuff so that we can reconstruct and he can pull up for you.
This is public record. This is the thing that John Allen did is he took everything in the county, and he got us called out East Amwell. But this is a public record. This is, and I don't know, because I've never been on the Historic Preservation Committee, and I still don't believe I'm on the Historic Preservation Committee. I'm simply the liaison between this group and the Historic Preservation Committee. As I said, I don't know that John Allen, that any of this came from the Historic Preservation Committee of East Amwell. I suspect most of this came from the county and from people like John Allen, who was working at the county, and other people. I mean, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is not, this is, and with maps and where,
I can't wait to look at
Yeah.
it. It's
What?
interesting. I can't wait to look at it. It's interesting, it's historical, and it's got value for the town.
Yep.
Thanks for
It's
your work.
definitely a good
Allen
building block.
used to be on the committee, and we went around and we photographed and we took the inventory and uploaded it to the county for the same way you do with your plans for this, that, and the other, to correct the inventory, back and forth. All of that work
probably
is
what you have.
gone unless somebody can go behind the veil and be allowed to look for it and recognize
Yeah.
it.
it's
Well-
not gone, Francis. It's here.
Right.
There's a lot more than what you think there is. There were spreadsheets, and John now won't be on any committee or anything like that because of the way experience he had, negative, when he was doing work with his spreadsheets. But the county didn't drive it. The committee over 20-some years, going from Alona to Barbara Sagasser to different people otherwise, they fed stuff up to the county, and the county can work with you reciprocally to help you map and inventory different places, because there are things that are on that list you that are not in East Amwell. I know of a couple specifically in Rayville, because we were following up with them.
Yeah.
But
Well, we can't change the past, so, you know,
It's not a matter of changing the
but going
past,
forward, I
it's-
think we're good.
Yes.
But
With the-
looking for what might be in the bowels of the building.
Who's going to look in the
Yeah.
bowels of the building?
I'd recognize it if I saw it.
Would you like to go look in the bowels of the building, Fred? I mean,
I have
we
to
had-
do it at, at a different time and all of that.
I don't think it's
That's-
necessary.
Yeah,
And
I
quite
think that's a
frankly,
whole
the
different
historic-
conversation.
You're on the committee right now, and you're not, there is nothing that's been done on the committee with respect to historic preservation. You're dealing with one house that you're basically tearing down. Great, there's funding in order to tear down that eyesore. But other than that, I look at the agenda because and I don't see anything on your agenda that deals with historic preservation.
Well, I guess you talk to Will now, because John resigned.
Okay. Anyway, anyone else from the public? All right, seeing no one else, can I get a motion
Motion
to
to
close to the public?
So,
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next is items for discussion. All our invoices, I don't know if anybody's looked at them all, but I would like to approve all of our invoices except for the Parker McKay invoices, as I have some questions for Alexis. So with that being said, could I get a motion to approve all of them except for the Parker McKay invoices?
so moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Those invoices, except for Parker McKay, are approved. Oral reports, we've got to skip down to Environmental Commission. Marnie, you're up.
I don't think we have anything since last month.
Okay.
It's
It is summer.
we already had Richard.
Yeah,
done.
Richard, you want to say anything else?
Oh, anything?
Yeah, on historic preservation?
Okay.
Okay.
It's not
Just-
carte blanche.
just
It's
asking.
not carte blanche. I've said quite enough.
Okay, I put on Township Committee for these oral reports. I'd like to hear from everybody. So Dante, you have anything you want to bring in front of the board?
Sure. So one matter folks may have saw from the last township committee meeting was stormwater ordinance or resolution, and essentially it has a land use impact because there are certain requirements that the state handed down to towns, and given our situation where we had changed tiers, and for other reasons we needed to adopt them, so it was all state required things, but that was proposed and adopted at the last meeting.
Right. Excellent. Okay.
And we now have a stormwater coordinator?
Yes.
Okay. Planning Board Secretary, anything?
I'll just request that everyone please respond to the emails when asking for attendance.
Done. Okay. As far as I'm concerned, I'm very thankful for the subcommittees for doing all their hard work. I really appreciate that. It's nice to come into a meeting and have our board discuss what we've discovered to the public, those who are watching us on YouTube, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Al, can I say one thing?
Yes, ma'am.
So at the end of last meeting, I said to Al that when I was down there on the other side, I always found it really frustrating. that Things would come up and, we would have a discussion and sometimes we'd take a vote and then at the end of the meeting, you got to talk about it. So I asked him, I actually didn't even ask, I just said it. I found it really frustrating. Is there something we could do? So I thank you for taking that on. On the other hand, I'm gonna be the bad person here.
Okay,
I'm
good,
gonna
come
say,
back up.
there's a benefit to that, right? Everyone, we all get the benefit of your input at the right time when we're making decisions, when it's relevant, but we can also end up going over the same thing over and over again. So my only request is when we're talking about warehouses or we're talking about, we keep it focused so that we don't lose this thing that Al's letting us try. And to the extent it's possible, if there's something out there in advance that can answer any questions, and I'm not, there often is not. Hopefully that can help. And it's just me trying to be on the other, you know, being on both sides of this one. So Al, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
I hope it works for all of us.
We're trying it. And
I
I'll
mean,
try
I
to
think
keep
we
the
had
comments
some-
short.
I think we had some really good
We did.
input, very helpful
We did.
input, so,
We absolutely did. Thank you.
thank you.
No, you're welcome. All right, can I get a motion to open to the public?
So moved.
Second, here we go. All in favor?
Aye.
Public? Come on down, Linda.
I didn't wait for you.
I know,
Saw your hand go first.
I love the way that it went today. I really felt that I was part of what you were doing. I thought that I was understanding what you were doing. I thought it was great. And I agree, keep it very focused on what we're looking on. I really tend to grab onto one thing and stay there. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Francis.
Gavin, I agree that this was probably one of the more productive and positive and less stressful planning board meetings that I've attended. And congratulations to Emily and Marnie and the others who have worked on this. I think there's an advantage if you, as you're moving forward, you maintain a collaborative approach to some things, like as if, Emily, you were still down in the cheap seats.
Yep.
And things like that, because there are a lot of people, if the farmers show up, and they will, depending on which way you're going with stuff or others, that there's wisdom there. Take what you like, leave the rest, and hopefully nobody will be nasty, and we can finish out the year in a positive and productive. Is there a demolition ordinance?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to go online and check.
Okay, I
But-
suspect there isn't, because there is the foundation on the corner of Wartsville and Rileyville Road, and there used to be a tavern there, a historic tavern, and it went away, or the Prowl House. So if there was some kind of ordinance that you put together, then you could be putting some guardrails around things that are on your list or considered important to at least get the visibility to review and talk about it. And John Allen will wanna go in there and look at the wood and track it back to how old the
Permit is
tree was.
required,
Right.
that's it.
Okay.
But no, good job, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Anybody else from the public? No? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to close to the public? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. There's no correspondence, so I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the East Amwell Planning Board
Motion.
meeting of
Second.
August 21st, 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
meeting's
Thank you
adjourned
all.
at 8:22, thereabouts.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.